I'm going to tell you 7 ways the Toyota Tundra became a less capable truck, where it went from first to worst in class in multiple ways, and things that Toyota won't advertise and the dealership won't tell you even if they know. If you like this video, feel free to hit like, feel free to hit subscribe, feel free to comment. If you dislike it, feel free to comment. Let us know why you don't agree with this assessment. What won't be included in this critique is the missing tow hooks. This is a ridiculous deletion and it warrants its own video separately. So the first thing the dealer's not going to tell you, even if they know it, is that this bed that you see in my son's 2015 XSPX, which is in a Crew Max, this bed got smaller in the new generation Tundra. It's not as deep, it's not as wide, and just a shade shorter, which doesn't make any sense to me because that vehicle, the new 2022 Tundra, got both longer and wider. Why did the bed get shorter? Well, the logical thought is, well, if the bed got shorter, then maybe you got some increased cab space. Well, that's the second thing they're not going to tell you at the Toyota dealership. The cab space isn't nearly as spacious in either the front or the rear cabins as it is in my second generation 2018 or my son's 2015. It's just not. That's just what it is. And the most stark thing you'll notice, if you're not in the double cab, which the double cab has almost no space in the back seat. A lot of people didn't like that I compared a double cab to a crew cab. The truth of the matter was that was all I had available to me at the time. Now that I've had them both available, I could tell you that when you see that double cab, you're going to be extraordinarily disappointed in the spaciousness. But in the crew cab, with me sitting, and I generally sit with the rear of my seat all the way down, I'm 6 feet tall, and I've got a good 6 inches between the top of my head and the roof. In the limited Crew Max that I drove with the panoramic roof, I had maybe 1.5 inches. It just felt very closed in. It's very, very tight in that new Tundra, and they're not going to tell you that. That's as simple as that, but it is problematic. The second generation Tundra already offered the least headroom in the full-size class for half tons. However, this new Tundra reaches a staggering new low at 36.9 inches for rear headroom and 39.3 in the front when you add the panoramic roof. All of the competitors have at least 40 inches of headroom in both the front and the rear of each of their pickups. The GMC leads the way in front headroom at 43 inches, and the Ram leads in rear headroom at 45 inches. I don't think we can count on Toyota to advertise the fact that they're last in headroom in both the front and the rear, and I don't think the dealership or the salesman is going to tell you that when you go to purchase one. The third thing they're not going to tell you, because they forgot to include anything right here to put your foot on to step up into it. And I can tell you that extra 3 or 4 inches that you save makes a big deal when you're trying to step into the bed. I mean, I theoretically can step into my bed without it. I can come up here and get my foot up there with enough momentum to get in, but boy, I don't want to have to do that. And stepping right there, that additional 3 inches changes that angle a whole lot and makes it a whole lot easier to get in. I think that's a big mistake, not having that step right there. And the dealership's not going to tell you that. And if you don't know about it before you go see them, and then you're going to use your truck, because again, it is a truck with a truck bed, and you go to say, hey, how do I get into that thing? Oh, I guess I got to slide up over it. Well, I didn't really want to do that. I'm not exactly wearing work pants today. I just wanted to get up there and put a couple things in, or I'm wearing shorts and I didn't want to scratch my legs up. I know some people will say, hey, that's what your rear tire is for, but I'm going to say it. That's just plain stupid. You spent $60,000 to $70,000 for this truck when you throw in taxes, and to have to step onto the rear tire and work dinging it up on the sides versus going ahead and just having an effective way to get into the bed in 2022, as all the competitors pretty much do, is just silliness. And it's just another thing that Toyota isn't going to advertise and isn't going to tell you got worse from the second gen to the third gen. Another thing the dealer's not going to tell you about, even if they do know it, is the change in turning radius. You look at where my driveway comes in here, and then right there where my son parks next to my daughter's 4Runner when they're home, what you can see is that my son can actually pull into this driveway and turn into that spot when my daughter's already parked there, no problem at all, because the tight turning radius and turning circle on this Tundra. The problem is the new Tundra, so go look at mine down here, the new Tundra increased its turning circle by almost 4.5 feet and over 2 feet on the turning radius. What that means is getting into tight parking spots is going to be a little bit more difficult. Now, of course, I've had somebody comment and say, hey, what are you doing pulling into parking spots anyway? Because you should be backing in with a truck. Well, that's not always possible. And if you live somewhere where it's fairly congested, it's not always reasonable to say you can back into a spot. It doesn't always allow for that. And it's silly with a truck that has the exact same wheelbase as my Tundra that you see right here, the exact same wheelbase, but somehow lost turning radius and turning circle. So what do I have to say about that? It's another place where Toyota went from first to worst. They had the best turning radius and best turning circle by quite a bit. Now they're worst in class, even behind the Nissan Titan. It's a shame that they've made this decision, and it's probably part of the TNGA shared platform that causes this, but it's made this truck a lot harder to maneuver. Now the most difficult to maneuver in the class versus previously the easiest to maneuver in the class. And they're not going to advertise that, and the dealer isn't going to tell you about it, even if they know that to be true. The fifth thing that the dealer isn't going to tell you about, or your salesman isn't going to tell you about when you go to buy this truck, and certainly that Toyota isn't advertising or talking about, is that if you look at my second generation, and this is true in my son's truck as well, it says 4,150 pounds for the rear axle. That new truck, the only sticker I've seen so far, and I'm waiting for people to post their stickers, the only sticker I've seen says 3,670 pounds, almost 500 pounds lighter on the rear axle. And when you see that rear axle in person, it's actually minuscule in comparison to the one I have here. So what's interesting here is this is my son's 2015. Now he's got the same 4,150 pounds in the rear axle, but he's only got 3,900 pounds in the front axle, whereas I had 4,000. I'm not sure what changes Toyota made to address that, but as you can see there, he's got 1,440 pounds total payload, which is almost 300 pounds more than I have. The interesting thing for him is that when we go back and look at his gross vehicle weight rating, it's only 7,000 pounds. I'm not sure what components would have caused that change. Mine's at 7,200. I understand 100 pounds less in his front axle. What I don't understand is the 200-pound change in his truck. The difference between his and mine is 2015 versus 2018. I have four-wheel drive. His doesn't, but that shouldn't add any gross vehicle weight rating to the vehicle. It's interesting to note how they calculate payload and gross vehicle weight rating. I'm not sure there's any true standard by which they're held. It's a lot like towing capacities used to be. Nonetheless, Toyota isn't advertising, the dealer isn't telling you, even if they know, how much that rear axle was reduced. So being able to lift these seats up and make an actual flat bed surface is something functionally you can do in this truck, and you can still store things underneath the seat that you cannot do with the 2022 Tundra. And Toyota is not going to tell you that. The dealer's not going to tell you that. They're certainly not going to advertise that they lost that functionality. Advertising their underseat storage if you don't get the hybrid battery. If you get the hybrid battery, this is the place where they put it and you lose all your storage. But even with the underseat storage, I still store stuff under my seats. I haven't bought one of the aftermarket cutouts, but there's plenty of room here for me to store things under my seat. But the thing I can do that they can't do is I can have a nice wide flat area that when I need to move, let's say a valuable picture, which I have done, or a valuable painting, I should say, or when I need to move a large TV set, whatever it might be that I don't want to put in the bed of my truck and I want to pack it in here safely, I'm able to do that undercover. Can't do that in the new one. That either you either have that storage area that's plastic for the bed, or you have the battery. So Toyota says they're getting the horsepower and torque numbers, and they're great horsepower and torque numbers, and they're going to be great either way, whether you're putting premium fuel or not in them, but they said they're getting them with regular fuel. But I got an email early on in the promotion of this, and one of the notations in the email, one of the points said that these numbers were achieved with 91 octane or higher. And then the engineers came out and said, no, it was regular fuel. Well, there's what the engineers say on a video, and then there's what goes into writing. Generally, when you have what goes into writing, that's the reason those payload numbers and those gross vehicle weight rating numbers are listed so low, because what goes into writing is what you have to live with. And what went into writing was not regular fuel to achieve those numbers. So the other thing they're not going to tell you is that you need to use the premium fuel to get the power numbers and the torque numbers that they're talking about. And I think that's going to be more accurate. It might also explain why when I drove the 2022 Limited, the salesman let me know that they had filled it up with regular fuel. And that might explain why it did feel a little bit off and sluggish and got into those turbos really quick for me, and just was not a great driving experience, because the people I've read who've had the LS500 with that engine have basically said that that engine is a dog if you try to run regular fuel in it. And I don't doubt that. A number of people said, hey, Toyota's retuned it. I don't know if I buy that much. I don't know if I buy that at all. I don't believe that. You can't tell me it performs best with 91 octane and then you retuned it and all of a sudden you can put 87 in it and it's going to be okay.